At my mother's birthday brunch, I casually asked, "So how's that vacation condo I surprised you with last Christmas?" She blinked and said, "What condo?" My sister's fork slipped out of her hand. I turned to her slowly and said, "You moved the deed into your name, didn't you?" Nobody at that table made a sound, and she just stared at her plate. I, 34M, have been sitting on this story for 8 months. I kept telling myself I needed more time, more proof, more distance before I could write it out. But here I am, and honestly, the table scene keeps playing on a loop in my head, and I think getting it out is the only way I stop seeing it every time I close my eyes. Some background. My mother turned 61 this past spring. She's a quiet woman, the kind who gets overwhelmed easily, forgets paperwork, trusts people without question. She's also not great with money, not because she's careless, but because nobody ever taught her. After my father passed 4 years ago, she became even more dependent on my older sister for most practical things. My sister is 38, sharp, always the one who handled things in the family. I work in commercial real estate, have for over a decade. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and over the years I've gotten decent at spotting opportunity. About 2 years ago, I found a small vacation condo in a coastal town about 3 hours from where we grew up. It wasn't flashy, 2 bedrooms, a balcony, walking distance from the water. But I knew the area was going to appreciate, and more importantly, I thought my mother deserved something she could call her own. Something that was hers, not borrowed from someone else's couch or a weekend invitation that depended on other people's moods. I bought it outright, used most of my savings, took a small loan for the gap. I had it put in her name as a Christmas gift. I worked with a local attorney, handled all the paperwork, made sure the deed transfer was clean and legal. The plan was to surprise her Christmas morning when we all gathered at the family house. Except she wasn't there that morning when I showed up with the envelope. My sister told me she had taken our mother out early for a quiet breakfast, just the 2 of them, and that I could leave the gift and she'd make sure Mom opened it. I thought nothing of it. I left the envelope with the deed and the keys on the kitchen counter, labeled clearly. Drove the 3 hours home. My mother called me that afternoon. She was emotional, said it was the most generous thing anyone had ever done for her. We talked for almost an hour. She said the condo sounded beautiful. I told her I'd take her there in January. January came and went. I got busy. She said she wanted to wait until it was warmer. Then spring came, and she said she wasn't feeling well. Then summer. I kept offering. She kept gently deflecting. 8 months passed. I didn't think anything was wrong. I just thought she was being her usual self, a little scattered, not wanting to be a bother. Then one evening in late fall, I was reviewing some old property filings for work. It was habit more than anything, the kind of casual browsing I do when I'm tired and not ready to close the laptop. Out of instinct, I searched the condo's address in the county property records. The deed was in my sister's name. I sat there for a long time. Long enough for my coffee to go cold. Long enough for my chest to do that thing where it gets tight and everything goes slightly out of focus. I searched again. Same result. The transfer had been recorded 11 months earlier, just weeks after Christmas. Signed over cleanly. I did not call my sister. I did not text my mother. I did not do anything impulsive, which, for anyone who knows me, was genuinely difficult. Instead, I called the attorney who had handled the original deed transfer. He pulled his records. The original deed had been in my mother's name. He had no record of any authorized secondary transfer, and he confirmed that any such transfer would have required my mother's signature and notarization. Either my mother had willingly signed over a property she'd been gifted just weeks before, without telling me, or someone had arranged for her to sign something she didn't fully understand. I thought about that for a week. I know my mother. I know how she is with paperwork. She signs things when someone she trusts puts something in front of her and says it's just a formality. She doesn't read carefully. She never has. After my father died, my sister became the person who handled that kind of thing, and my mother simply trusted her completely. I hired a property attorney. A different one, someone I didn't know. I laid out the facts without editorializing. He told me the transfer, if it had been obtained through misrepresentation or undue influence, could potentially be challenged. But he also said the burden of proof would be on me, and it would get messy and expensive and emotionally costly. I told him to keep his file open, but to hold off on any action. I wanted to understand first. I wanted to know how deep this went. So for the next 3 months, I paid attention. Not in a dramatic way. I just started listening more carefully, asking casual questions when I visited, noting small things. My sister had recently renovated her bathroom. She'd taken a solo trip to Portugal, she mentioned offhand. She'd bought a new car. She had also started renting the condo. Short-term vacation rentals. I found the listing by accident while looking for a place to take a friend for a long weekend. The photos were unmistakable. My mother's condo, the one I'd bought with my savings, listed under my sister's name, bringing in what I estimated was roughly $3,000 to $4,000 a month during peak season. I kept all of it. Saved every screenshot. Got formal documentation from the county records office. Pulled the rental listing and archived it. Got the rental payment history through a roundabout method I won't detail here. Got a written opinion from my attorney. Then I waited for my mother's birthday. We did the brunch every year. Small gathering, just immediate family. Our mother's closest cousin, a neighbor she'd known for decades. Me, my sister's husband, and her 2 kids. It was never a formal event, more like a long late breakfast with mimosas and a cake. The kind of morning where everyone is relaxed and the conversation drifts easily. I arrived early. I helped set the table. I was warm to my sister, the same as always. She had no idea. We were maybe 40 minutes in, plates still full, the table feeling easy and loose with conversation. My mother was laughing about something her cousin had said. I let the moment breathe. Then, as casually as I could manage, I turned toward my mother and asked how she was enjoying the vacation condo I'd surprised her with last Christmas. I kept my voice easy, like I was just making conversation, like it was the most natural thing to bring up. My mother's expression shifted. Not guilt, not evasion, just genuine confusion. She said she wasn't sure what I was talking about. She looked puzzled, the way she does when she's trying to remember something that isn't coming back to her. I heard the fork hit the plate before I processed what had happened. Metal on ceramic, sharp and sudden. Everyone at the table heard it. I turned toward my sister slowly. I asked her, just as calmly, whether she had moved the deed into her name. The table went silent in the way that only happens when something real has entered the room. Not uncomfortable silence. More like the absence of breath. My mother's cousin stopped mid-reach for her juice. The neighbor looked down. My sister's husband went very still. My sister didn't look at me. She looked at her plate. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She didn't say anything at all. My mother asked what was going on. I told her, quietly, that I had bought a condo in her name as her Christmas gift the year before that. The deed had been transferred into my sister's name shortly after without my knowledge, and that the property had been rented out on a short-term basis for the better part of a year. My mother looked at my sister for a long time. My sister still didn't look up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't want the moment to be theatrical. I'd rehearsed staying level, and I did. I told my sister that I had documentation, that I had spoken with an attorney, and that I was prepared to pursue formal action if necessary, but that I wanted to give her the opportunity to correct this directly, at the table, in front of the people who loved our mother. My sister's husband started to say something. My sister put her hand on his arm, and he stopped. My mother's cousin stood up, took her glass, and went to stand near the window. Not dramatically, just to remove herself from the immediate radius. I understood that instinct. My sister finally looked up. She looked at our mother, not at me. She started to say something about how she had been handling everything for years, about how I only showed up for the good moments, about how the financial pressure had been enormous since their father died, and I had just been out living my life. Her voice cracked once. She kept talking anyway. I let her finish. Then I told her that whatever her reasoning was, taking something that was given to our mother and converting it into personal income without consent was not a response to financial pressure. It was a choice. And it was a choice that had consequences. My mother asked my sister, very quietly, if she had signed something she hadn't understood. My sister looked at her plate again. That was its own kind of answer. The brunch ended shortly after that. Not with screaming, not with anyone storming out. Just a slow dispersal, like air going out of a room. My mother's cousin hugged my mother for a long time on the way out. The neighbor said very little. My sister and her husband left quickly, her kids quiet and confused in the back seat of the car. I stayed and helped my mother clean up. She didn't ask a lot of questions. She asked me once whether I was angry with her, and I told her honestly that I wasn't. She hadn't done anything wrong. She had trusted someone she was supposed to be able to trust. Update 1. I'm writing this about 3 weeks after the brunch. My attorney sent a formal letter to my sister the week after, outlining the situation and requesting the transfer of the deed back to my mother's name within 30 days, along with an accounting of rental income collected during the period she held the property. The letter made clear that failure to comply would result in formal legal action. My sister called me 2 days after receiving it. The conversation was long and difficult. She said she had convinced herself it was a practical decision, that our mother didn't know what to do with the property anyway, that she was just managing it on her behalf. I told her that managing something on someone's behalf and secretly taking ownership of it are not the same thing, and she knew that. She cried. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't back down either. She said she would transfer the deed back. Update 2. 6 weeks after the brunch. The deed has been transferred back to my mother's name. My attorney confirmed it. My sister also wrote my mother a check for 8 months of net rental income, which was more than I expected her to do voluntarily. I don't know if that was guilt or fear of litigation or both. Probably both. My mother deposited the check. She told me she didn't know how to feel about it, that she still loved my sister, but that something had changed, some basic sense of safety she had in that relationship. I told her that was a reasonable thing to feel. I didn't try to talk her out of it. My sister and I are not in contact right now. I don't know what that looks like going forward. I don't have a clear answer for that yet. My mother has asked me twice if I'll take her to the condo in the spring. I told her yes, absolutely, we'll go whenever she wants. She said she'd like to see the balcony. I'm looking forward to that.